Ready? Okay. Call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mochler,
Here.
Packard,
Here.
Smith. Manning is absent. Hammond.
Yeah, here. Let's see, conflict of interest declaration. Are there any? Hearing none, approve agenda with the request to add park board.
And to add the change of meeting to June 10th
Yes.
due to election on.
Oh, good call.
I knew I was forgetting something.
Yep. Oops. Oh.
So is that a motion then, Phyllis?
Yeah.
Do I hear a second? I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call. Or actually, all in favor. It's gonna take a while to get used to this.
Yep.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approve minutes.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read them.
That's my issue too.
Yeah, so I would propose that
Is it
we
possible for us to
do that
defer?
next week.
We can defer those till next meeting.
Okay.
So can I get a motion to do that?
Yep, motion to table for next meeting.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Are there any visitors to be heard?
Yes.
This is Lane, just one thing. Please remember your mics.
Sorry,
Thank you, Lane.
Guilty is charged.
I turned mine on.
You
Probably.
got it on, as long as it's up. So state your name.
I'm Al Markheim. I'm the president of the Vermillion Pistol Club, and I'm here to hopefully get more information about the action the board, the commission took at their last meeting on the Parks Board lease.
Okay, and we will be discussing that later also. But yeah, maybe we should wait till we get through Rod then. That way we can get into a discussion on it. Bill, did you have the same
I'm
issue?
Bill Kennedy, on the Parks Board, Clay County Park Board, and I also am interested in that, and we'll talk about it later apparently.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any other visitors? Hearing none. Rod, we've got the report on results of surplus sale.
Excuse me. Yeah, we did all right, I guess. Weed department brought in $12,365. That old spray truck brought 11,300, and he had a bunch of small reel hose reels in a tank. The Department of Equalization's Explorer brought 4,050. I kind of thought that might bring a little more, but. And then Highway Department got 59,957.50. So our old Sterling brought about 6,000 more than it did last year, same year truck, 25,250 for that. And that 1986 Fruhoff belly dump brought 6,300. The old black dually brought 2,850, and the side dump brought 25,250. So the new side dump we just bought ended up only costing us $28,000 in reality from whatever. So yeah, it went better than expected in the truck. I didn't figure the truck was gonna bring that much.
Yeah, some went really well, some kind of average.
Yeah, and then we had some smalls on their tires, and that's about it. I don't know, Randy, is that your old, the one I had, is that your old? Boy, yeah, was in very good condition. I actually thought it'd bring more.
What did it end up bringing? Do you remember?
Was that
What did it end up bringing?
$4,050?
Yeah.
That was about the only thing we had that I was kind of thought would bring a little more. But
Anything else for the surplus sale?
no,
Agreement for removal of structure 14-130-176.
yeah, here, I'll have you sign these two because I gotta send in a hard copy too. There's actually 3 there, but I signed the back one. And that's just saying that there's no right of way, there's no utilities. The state looked into it. It's just a formality. They have to have it on the book showing you guys. I brought it in front of you and I just didn't sign it and send it in, so. And I believe there's a spot there for Carrie.
Yep.
Has to attest to it too. But this is for that first bridge on the state removal. What is it, mile east of University and half mile south of 314th. The big one. We always call it South Manning Speed Lot, but not everybody knows where that's at.
Yeah.
So I recommend you sign them and keep the ball rolling.
Okay.
Move to have the chair sign the agreement.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion passes.
These habits are hard to break, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. What was it? It's been a year of,
I know,
Uh-huh.
I know.
Oh, you do
We're
it.
all a little different than we were a year
since
ago.
we're all here,
You
we don't
do
do
it-
roll call anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I wondered how.
I'll
come
stay
that-
home one day so you can try it again. No.
I never thought that. I wondered how come that started. No,
That's why.
you stuttered once and I'm like, wonder what's,
County striping project.
yeah, I tell you. If it ain't COVID, it's ice storm. So we're having trouble getting, not just us, state of South Dakota put out the paving project as they, or striping project as they always do, and nobody would bid on it because of lack of paint. Big shortage of paint on account of the Houston ice storm. So.
Excuse for everything.
So they're letting out part of it, I guess. Unfortunately, we can't get in on that first part with our mastic ceiling, which is what we really need to have striped in the first place, but sounds like the shortage is, they're working on it, but they're not letting out the bid till sometime in July. So just to warn you of why, if it takes a little longer for us to get the road striped than normal.
But we're not gonna slow down on the mastic ceiling. Okay.
No, they told us no way to back off on that but if they have to, they'll let it out to all 3 companies and that usually bid on it and each one of them has a supply. We might have Dakota Traffic doing one and Diamond Vogel doing part of it. So they're trying to work something out anyway, but it ain't just South Dakota either. So, I mean, it's all states. So just, I'd warn you about that in case. Well, they ain't gonna leave us high and dry. They'll at least do center lines and it might be the old paint, so it won't have glass beads in it. But they got plenty of glass beads. It's the white and yellow paint they're short on, which just seems hard to believe, but I
Yeah.
didn't realize that's the only place paint came out of.
Did it all freeze in the big freeze or something?
Who knows? It's always just trying to, I suppose, just trying to get the building built back together. Anything else, Rod?
Just an update on the extension to the weed building, the foundation has been poured for a couple weeks. They're there this morning. Looks like they're starting to put it up today, so they thought they'd be done maybe by the end of the second week in June, the first week in June, or third week in June, so that moved right along. So other than that, that's all I have.
Anybody have anything for Rod? Thanks, Rod.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a motion on the moving the meeting to the 10th.
So move that we
Second.
move.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. So the meeting is next Thursday at 9 o'clock on the 10th. Now we have Park Board.
Okay, so Shane Birch will be here. I had suggested he come at 9:15, so
Okay.
he should be here any minute.
That anything I need to stick around for?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Your signs are ordered, by the way, so
We'll let you off the hook this time, Rod.
darn.
I haven't talked to anybody yet on those culverts or something.
Oh, yeah, I forgot I was gonna ask you about that. Okay,
We get nothing else up over. Okay, see what we can do.
all right, and you let me know. Oh, God.
On the Parks Board stuff, I took 3 sets of pictures, some from March, some from May 10th, is it? March 6th, May 21st, and then yesterday. And I'd like to have the board look through those and for any comments. I think that there's been a lot, and Betty's pictures are there too, so that we'd have those two as a baseline also.
Yeah, these aren't my pictures.
Okay,
So I mean, I don't know where.
they're the ones that were submitted last week. I thought
Yeah,
they
I
were
think it was the VC, somebody sent them to the VCDC,
Okay,
and they can tell you.
in short, as far as park condition and the condition of the grounds, I thought it's in excellent condition at the end of this holiday weekend. That's when you usually think there's going to be a lot of wear and tear. The campground is fully occupied. So I took shots of around in general, up at the playground, down at the river. Two of the river shots are shots and to again congratulate Leo Powell on the Kids Don't Float work. The one last week, the structure was up, but there were no life preservers there. He got life preservers donated from Game Fish and Parks, and those were up yesterday. So there's Betty's at the one right there, probably from yesterday.
Oh, the kids don't float.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully it works better than Yankton's. They posted theirs, Yankton County Emergency. And they said every time they go down there, they're all gone.
They lose a lot of them, and we expect that. That's the nature of that sort of thing. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try.
No,
Yeah.
I just hope that.
And actually, Leo and I talked. I called him right after I was down there last week, and he didn't answer. He got back to me yesterday. We had a long range discussion about. I had another suggestion how we might be able to work with this as far as the make it so he could add more life preservers and have a better selection there. So anyway, those pictures are to give you all an idea of where we're at now. I think the March pictures that I took, I've been terming as something like the third rehearsal of the high school play. We expect the park to have a lot of wear and tear over the winter that is not going to be kept up. But opening day, there's photos, and in my opinion, everything was in excellent shape at that point. And I went around and did more shots yesterday. There was a little, yesterday morning, there was some debris on the south shower room floor. It's just leaves and stuff that got tracked in by somebody. There were little stray toilet paper here and there. There was a single plastic bag free up at the north playground. I picked that up, by the way. But everything seems to be in excellent shape in that respect. I thought that our actions last week were hasty. We had not given all of the players involved a chance to notice and chance to come to our meeting where we canceled that lease. At the very least, you have to give notice. That's part of due process of law of meetings like this, that you have to let people like the rodeo grounds guys and the shooting club guys, they're directly affected by this. And even the Parks Board. Terry didn't have opportunity to show up.
With all due respect, I think what we did was give notice. In other words, we gave notice of intent. So that gave us a month to talk about this.
We gave the 1 month, to get there. When you give a leasee a notice, that means they need to be out at the end of that 30 days. That's the way leasee agreements work. So it was also with due respect, I think that's incorrect. That we didn't give notice that we were going to act 30 days from now. We gave them 30-day notice that they're out. This is a lease agreement. So what we did last week, I thought was inappropriate. And I would move to rescind that action from last week.
Yeah, what I'd
With
like
the idea that we would go ahead and make, continue to make improvements, monitor improvements at the park and of board actions.
I would like to hear from Shane Birch, who just,
I think that was a motion.
It was. The only problem, Dick, we just found this morning. When an action has been executed, you can't act on it again. Unless you can bring it back we can't get it back to where it was when we discussed it last week. Now, that doesn't mean we can't change something.
Mm-hmm.
We just can't act on the motion we made last week.
I was under the impression at the following meeting after an action that you have an opportunity
You can, as long
to
as,
send it.
how did they word it in here?
And Travis, since you stopped me this morning, I've looked into this a little bit further.
Okay.
Two things. A motion to reconsider, from my understanding, needs to be made at the meeting where the decision and the action was taken. So you can do that anytime before there's an adjournment, an actual adjournment. So even after someone makes a motion to adjourn, you're okay. But once you've adjourned that meeting, unless it's a continuing meeting, it's a meeting that's gone multiple days, then you can roll into the next day and maybe ask for that motion to reconsider. There's also a motion to rescind that's an option. But even that, and so that's something that possibly can happen at the next meeting. But even that, as Travis pointed out, that the fatal determination here is the letter's been sent. So once you've taken an action upon that cannot be undone, you can no longer do the motion to rescind, or in my assessment, even a motion for, the motion for reconsideration cannot be done because we're on the next meeting. And even the motion to rescind, I think at this point in time, would be problematic. So if you're going to discuss something, I think it would be more, do you want to change how you go about things going forward?
Thank you for the clarification.
So the letter has been sent?
Yes.
yeah. So what I was hoping for from this meeting is, a chance to think about where we go from here. And, we've asked Shane Birch from State Game Fish and Parks, who's manages this area, to come today. So I would love to, to hear from Shane.
While they're getting him a microphone, I am going to extend Dick the courtesy that we're gonna delve into that stuff too.
Sure, thank you. And as you know, I've taken this perhaps too seriously, maybe not. But I've been agonizing about this since last meeting. And I thought that we acted arbitrarily to take the action we did. I took it as canceling a lease agreement. And that cancellation notice is the notice that prevails. That means that leasee's got to be out at the end of that cooling off, that interim period. 30 days later, my interpretation is Parks Board better have their stuff off the land 30 days hence.
Yeah, I think that the appropriate, in the event that we decided to go your way, the appropriate action would be a new lease. That would be the way to remedy that. I'm not suggesting that I favor that, but I think that would be the way to do it. Would be to create a new lease. And, if we did that, we might want to require, things like accounting, which we haven't had.
All right, Shane.
Yeah, my name is Shane Birch. I'm the district park supervisor based out of Lewis and Clark Recreation Area, but we actually have properties from Clay County here all the way to Running Water. So a few campgrounds in there in between, but thank you for letting me speak a little bit. I've been in this position for 20 years now and have worked with the Clay County Park Board for a number of years. Did a lot of good things when we started bringing the park back up and working together. We've done projects together. It's kind of a mutual thing. And last year was kind of tough because we didn't have any meetings because of COVID. But I think, going forward, decisions have been made, whether it's reorganizing, we're willing to work with whatever. If it's the commission that we work with or a sublease, we're always there to assist and help out any way we can. We appreciate the highway department moves our docks in and out, which alleviates us from having to travel 70 miles to do that, when the water's adjusted. So a lot of things working together. And the park board has done some mowing for us too down at by the boat ramp area and picnic area. So and they do bill us for that, so we do pay them for that too. It's maybe the reorganization would be a really good way to go. Get a new board set up. I think that would probably work out well. But as far as running the park, I brought some job duty descriptions of Springfield Recreation Area, which is pretty similar to Clay County. And I can pass that out to you guys if you want those copies there. And you'd probably need some sort of campground host in there. A couple that would be willing to, manage the campground, maybe do the mowing, that type of stuff. And then, you already have the law enforcement with the county deputies coming through there, which is great. We have a conservation officer that is willing to come through too at times, Tony Stokely. So have some good coverage there. Not really a lot of problems in that campground, which is good. We like the quiet campgrounds. But the main thing is continuing with the maintenance and keeping the park up to speed. I know there's, going to be an issue when you're going through with deciding whose equipment is what. I think there's some personal stuff in there that some of the volunteers have brought in to use. So that'll be kind of a challenge to identify that, have to walk through each piece of equipment and get that all straightened out. But I think, you know, hearing that reorganization of the board, I think that would be a really good step, in my opinion, to still have that board and alleviate some of your pressure to operate it as a commission. Because it's, to manage a campground, it takes quite a bit of time and people to do that. And having a board to make decisions would really help. So any questions for me?
Yeah. How do you find a campground host?
I put a call out to Peer to see if there's anybody that hasn't signed up that they still have on the list. So I'm waiting to hear back from that. The other thing is you can advertise even locally if you can find a couple that's retired. They work out great. We run about 20 hosts throughout the year, which some don't stay in the park the whole summer, but do a month here, a month there. But in your case, I would try to get somebody to do the whole summer if you're going to do that. So you have consistency and, somebody that would come back year after year. And the other thing you could do is pay them, if you wanted to pay them, $500 a month or something like that. We have work campers as well. They actually get a free campsite, then we pay them an hourly wage. So that's another option. One thing too to consider, if you wanted some more coverage in the evenings, you could hire a seasonal campground ranger that can kind of go through the park, say 8 to midnight or something like that. And if there's any problems, then he could call the deputy. Usually by midnight, maybe even 1 o'clock, people are pretty quieted down. We start doing walkthroughs. Our campground's about 11 o'clock, and just visit with people if they got a loud radio on or something like that. So.
Are hosts actually responsible for the upkeep of the equipment and awareness and the mowing and
Not necessarily
the care?
upkeep, but the one at Springfield, we're lucky there because he's actual mechanic, retired mechanic. So he can do some repairs, but the general maintenance of the equipment, we usually have our own shop people do that. But we have a mower over there for him, and we keep that mower at the golf course in a shed, and then he's able to use it there. So then he has a weed eater and all the other stuff to maintain things too.
That's kind of an advantage we have now. Some of the seasonals that are living there, essentially in the summer times, a few of them, they act as hosts. They mentor those that are coming and going weekly or for a weekend, that sort of stuff. I witnessed a little bit of that this last weekend, that not all of the seasonals take on that role, but some of them do. The seasonals are kind of expected to help the spring cleanup. It was mid-April, and they had the April cleanup where they'd cut fallen timber, pick up branches, sticks, and all that good stuff, and take care of those, pick up the trash. There were actually three camp or park cleanups this year. Betty organized one. There was one that was the regular one that involved the seasonals plus volunteers plus the manager's family. That was middle of April, and then there was one that the Hammock Club organization that had the Hammock Club get together. They did a cleanup after their own work. What date was that? April 24th? Somewhere in late April.
Yeah, I think it was the 24th.
Yeah, and I attended that. That was we did not make a world's record, but it was a fun, nicely run afternoon. Turned out very nicely.
Okay. Anybody else?
What's your opinion on the condition? Have you been down lately to the camp?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's in pretty good shape. Definitely needs some cleanup around the park manager's area there. That's probably the number one area.
I think we have a roll-off that's going to get filled from that area here coming up in the next few weeks.
Sure. Yeah. Other than that, I think it's looking pretty good in there. Maybe some weed eating needs to be done, and that's a time issue and help. I realize that, and we do some chemical control around our trees because we have so many at Lewis and Clark, and they have bigger campgrounds, you know, so.
Yesterday, I spotted some poison ivy actually climbing one of the trees in the campground area.
Oh, yeah,
They're taking care of that right off the bat too.
nice.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff that's going into the roll-off, it's actually not trash. A lot of that is accumulated bicycles and metal that people have left at their campsites over the years. There's several years of accumulated scrap iron that's why we're going to put it in the roll-off and take it up to Yankton
Sure.
and sell it.
Yeah, stuff that don't fit in the dumpsters or you can't put in the dumpsters.
Right, right.
Yeah.
We
So-
get that too.
So I think at this point, what we're really talking about is two different management models, right? So in one management model, it would be the association that continues to manage. And the issues there, I think we laid out pretty well last week. There is zero accountability. There's cash and checks, and there are like $690 in bad checks last month, last year. There are some issues around, knowing who's at the campground, having names, addresses, and license plates, and general organization issues. There certainly have been, as the photos show, some really serious maintenance issues, which it sounds like they're really they're really resolved. So so that would be one model. Right now, the association meets once a month. The association budget actually pays for everybody's meals. And there's a meeting, as far as I can tell, there's not the hands-on management has been left to park management. So the other model has, and there are no receipts. Just say.
Well, there are. Each place that where when somebody shows up, they do fill out the ticket that's furnished by Game Fish and Parks, and they're available at the front. And yes, we fill out those numbered receipts that have license plates, numbers on it. It's not that those are kept for long term, but they do exist. They're there short term, and if there was issues with law enforcement, that Andy's very good about every night. One of the deputies does a drive-through, and for security, two keys that I think is, one is that we've got good support from the sheriff's department. The second is several years ago, the Parks Board actually asked the Parks manager to move to the site so that there'd be somebody on site year round, at least, that not in the campground. He moves to the campground to manage that every summer, but have somebody on site. And during that period of time, after we had an on-site manager, just having somebody there watching out and having the sign that says manager there and having somebody behind it is cut out a ton of the problems that Lexi brought up last time. Those were big issues historically at that park, according to the old timers on the board and old timers on our commission. In fact, I had a couple of them call me and gave me a good talking to that do I understand the history of this park? Do I understand that the Parks Board asked the manager to move to the site from a much nicer home to down there? He's fine with that. But having a manager on site with presence every day, especially in the evenings and overnight, is very important to having a campground that's going to be run the way we want it to be run. So if we go to a different method, just having hosts, they're part-time hosts, I don't know if that's good enough for us.
Yeah, so just to clarify, there may be receipts, but they are not given to the treasurer. And when she's requested them, the management has been really angry and refused to give them to her. So that's kind of that's an issue.
Yeah.
And so we have no internal control at all.
Have you followed up on that criticism?
I've spoken to the treasurer.
Have you followed up on that?
What do you mean by follow-up?
Have you followed up with both sets to see what happens to those tickets and how long they're retained?
I know that at one point you were asking for the receipts and you had not yet received them. And that was a few weeks ago. So,
That's right.
so maybe you've gotten the receipt since
We
then.
need to get that. We do need to have that under control.
Yep.
And that's something I'm very
Yeah.
adamant about.
Yeah. All right. So that's one model. One model is continuing what we're doing, and, maybe tightening up. Another model would certainly be the commission directly managing with the help of an advisory board. So essentially, the association lease would be ended and the commission would create an advisory board that would basically do the same thing, but under the direct control of the commission. So right now it's a private association. They elect themselves every year at the annual meeting for 3-year terms. The advisory board would be directly appointed by the commissioners. And would serve, obviously we would have to create a system for doing that. The present model, all the money goes into the association account. It's a nonprofit 501c3. What would happen under the second possible system would be that all the money would go into a special revenue account in our auditor's office, so that payroll would be done based on invoices, and payroll and the money would come in as revenue, and that would remain dedicated to the park. So it's two different models. In one model, I think the commission has a bit more control. The other model, it continues to be controlled by a nonprofit association.
If I can say something in here, kind of haven't left a moment to get in. I am in favor of reviewing with I feel we made a decision much too early and quickly. There's a lot involved in not only the campground, but all of the other grounds and the other organizations involved in that whole system out there, and it is a system. I don't think we took into consideration what the changes would require as far as budgeting and work within our own personnel. It's loading this on to our internal personnel. I would like to see us do a new idea of looking at the lease or reviewing the lease with the board of directors, come up with a plan on how to make sure that the financials are appropriate. One thing that has occurred to me, there were certain things said last week that now that I'm seeing other paperwork and having received some irate phone calls. And I rarely get phone calls, but I had to hold the phone away on the action last time. And so I truly feel that we need to step back, work with the park board, work with the current personnel out there, see how we can do improvements and make improvements. But actually taking over the control, I have a real problem with that. First of all, it is a 501c3. It is a nonprofit organization. For us to go in and take it over, to me, I don't legally know how that's possible. Second that came to mind is there's a vote going on next week that no matter what the outcome of that vote, we will have massive amounts of decisions and work to do for the future. I don't feel this is an appropriate time, and it kept coming back to change horses midstream. It's never a wise idea. I think we can take this year to really look at any difficulties, problems, needs of the Clay County Park and review and update those. But to make massive changes right now, I find internally and publicly is wrong.
Yeah, so I guess I'm concerned that there's no infrastructure in the association for making reservations, for answering the phone. People have been complaining that they can't get in there. The number of problems right now that have to be solved really immediately, either way, right? Whatever model we choose, we've got a big set of problems. But I think right now, the financial accountability is zero. And you had said you weren't certain what our legal grounds would be. We actually, the state leases the land to the county. And so it's really the county's land to dispose of. We in turn sublease to the association. So it's completely legal. In other words,
To deal with the lease, but to take over the 501c3.
oh, no, we would not take over the 501c3. Oh, no, that would not, in other words.
Or you're eliminating the need for it.
No, well, the 501c3 continues and it has, I don't know, what about $35,000, $38,000, something like that in the bank. They continue. And, they can even continue to work with and on the park. What would change would be financial control, right? It's, in my mind, it's the financial control and that has been the most difficult part of working with the association because it just, there isn't any. We should be concerned about that park because we're responsible. We're the lessees from the state. We're responsible for making sure that that park gets what it needs and that the citizens of this county can use it. And that has not worked very well for the last few years. Again, we can rehabilitate the system and the lease is the way that we do that, or we can take more direct control. I think, to speak to your issues, I think either way, the organizations that are subleasing continue to sublease. In other words, but it might be in one model, it would be from the association, and the other model, it would be from the county. But I don't think anybody wants to change. The rodeo grounds have been like a great community building, really wonderful part of the park, and I think the same is true for the clubs that lease. So I think either way, you're good.
Well, I disagree for quite a 60% disagree on the financial controls. Phyllis has the spreadsheet of where money's come from, where it's gone to, how it's been spent, and I hesitate to believe that we're going to be able to run that park on $60,000 a year. It's going to be, that's what the receipts have been. They've been able to run it to its present standards of whether they're too high or too low at this point. That's another thing that we need to talk about. But what's your thoughts, Shane? The total budget is $60K essentially, and there's no money that comes directly from the county, other than county-owned land contributes about $17,000 to the operation of the park each year. That's money that if we didn't have the Parks Association, if we didn't have a park there, if we plowed the place down, we'd have that 17K per year to use for other purposes. Build 100 yards of road, but I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do, but we're just that's so at this point, that's the county's input. I consider that county's input.
Yeah, I can tell you there's very few parks that actually make a profit, campgrounds, that is. Lewis and Clark and Custer are two of them. There might be one or two more in the state, but that 17,000 does supplement what it costs to run the park. And we also help with certain things. We just recently pumped out the septic tanks. So there's some help on our end too. So
Yes.
We look at it as a cooperative thing. Our mission is to provide recreation, and whether we're running it or somebody else is running it, if it's our property, we want to make that happen.
Yeah, even presently, I guess the point is there's a lot of volunteerism that goes into running that place. It makes it so we can get by with that kind of expenditure internally in running that park.
Mhm.
And there's, it's not fancy two column bookkeeping that's going on, but there's enough stuff enough documentation that we can know that there can't be skimming of cash going on. It doesn't take much forensic bookkeeping to do that. We know that we're having pretty close to full use of the park, of the campground. It's fully used. If we had a great reservation system, we wouldn't be selling any more campgrounds, or very many of them at least, on an average year. So there's not much reason to change in my estimation in that setup.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the concern is the number of very unhappy campers or would-be campers, and the lack. I mean, I differ with you. I mean, as I look at this, and having talked to the treasurer, I mean, basically, this is a list of money that's come in and money that's gone out, but we don't know what the money's come in for. We don't know. There's no way of matching who came into the campground with, the money that was deposited. There's, there haven't been available to members of the board any accounting, no receipts, nothing. And so under those circumstances, it's impossible to know, what's actually happening on the ground. And so that's a real concern of mine. There ought to be a register of everybody who's camping, what they've paid. I mean, it's pretty simple. And there ought to be a reservation system so that people who are coming here, know I can get a week, in a campsite in July, and I can plan my vacation around it. So, so those are the things that aren't working, but there are things that are working, right? And so the question is whether to try to save the current system. But, I would just submit that it would be a lot easier to reorganize with an advisory board directly under the county, that would allow us to bring in, some, the auditor doing the accounting and the treasurer, balancing the books, and, a camp host who would actually be there, all the time for, throughout the season. I think there are a number of possible advisory board members, including Lane, who I think would provide some real expertise. And I think at this point, the park needs some love. I mean, you know, as most of you know, I am a regular park user, except for the last 6 weeks when I've been in a cast. But normally, you know, I'm kind of hiking those trails every week, and you know, I'm out on the river on a boat, and you know, I'm there 3 days a week. So, you know, I feel like I've had a chance to see what's going on, and I'm concerned. I think the park needs some love, and it's up to the commission to determine, you know, how we're going to do that. You know, I think it's probably a lot smoother and more reliable for the commission to create an advisory board that works directly with, you know, with Shane Birch and the, you know, the regional GF&P people. And, you know, I think I mean, like Bill understands the rodeo grounds like nobody else. And, you know, I would see him as part of that advisory board. I mean, I don't think it's checking the whole thing out. You know a lot about that park. I'd see you on the advisory board. I mean, I think we could constitute it in a way that would serve, you know, the people who are making all the phone calls upset because they can't get in.
I agree. I know that we need to have some great improvements to the financial control. We're working on that. I think that from another weekend of going out twice and interviewing campers, we have very happy campers. What we have is very unhappy wannabe campers. It's the idea of we have a very scarce resource. We only have 44 spots there. And I understand that if you're the 48th and the 50th and the 60th that want a spot on a given weekend or some given weekend in the future, that's really frustrating. And I understand that. And I know that those, I am adamantly opposed to making more campsites. Part of the good part of that park is that it is a bit of riparian forest nature. And I almost, one of the thoughts I have, I almost wish it were called the folks that donated that land to the county 40 years ago. We should probably be calling it the Wherry Nature Preserve rather than the Clay County Park. I think it gives us expectations that maybe we should not even have. And having it as something that's a big deal to promote more tourism. I don't know that it's a proper to use that as something to promote a huge amount of tourism. I think it ought to be used by VCDC. They're good at promoting Vermillion as a community and all it can be. But in light of the only way that you could really make it into more of a money cow would be to put more campsites in or something. And I think that is an incredibly bad idea.
Yeah, I agree with you on the more campsites where, you know, if we can just manage the ones we have really well, I think that's all for the best. And I don't think we want it to be a cash cow. I think what we want it to be is a great place for, you know, people to be able to take their families camping. And I know Lane said last week he won't take his family there, you know, because of conditions. And
I do. I take my grandchildren there, and my son takes his kids there all the time. I tried to call Lane because I wanted to have him expand upon that. If there's some reason that I should not be taking Ella there, I want to know that. I haven't heard. I'd like to visit with Lane about that because that's important to me.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that it's where people are getting upset is not that they were waiting on a line to get a campsite and they were 48th instead of 44th. It's that they see that there are spaces open and there are people camping there, and the camp manager won't call them back, or they're unable
to get a reservation, or they go there and they're told, no reservations available. We don't have reservations. You know, we have not had policies and procedures that protect citizens who want to use the park. And I'm not saying that we couldn't have policies and procedures, but once the county leases the space to a private association, that private association then controls the space completely. And we have absolutely nothing to say about their accounting or their, their fairness in handing out camping spots. All 10 of the seasonal camping spots were given away before people were able to sign up for them. That disappointed so many people. There was one person in particular who was berserk, and I don't blame him, because last year he said, I want to be a seasonal camper next year. And, he was never given an opportunity. There are 14 people on the site and people are told, nope, no camping spaces. So those are the kinds of things that are happening, that are, when I came on the board that first month, I asked for bylaws and there weren't, they were in Florida. Nobody else had them. I asked for a budget. There's not really a budget. This is the second time I've seen this. And it really is just a listing of deposits in and deposits out, or in checks out. It's not, there's no there. You can't manage without understanding these things.
And that's what we're working towards fixing.
Yeah, and I think it really is up to the commission whether, and I would have certainly no objection to, maybe giving a month-to-month lease for a period of months to see if the association can, improve. But if it can't, to take it back. And I see Bill Kennedy shaking his head no. Maybe you can.
Bill is here, and that's the next thing I want to do is ask for Bill.
I would love to hear from Bill.
And I'd like to ask Andy what his thoughts are on security there, and how it may get worse or how it could get better. Let Bill go first.
Excuse me, my name's Bill Kennedy. Live out west of the Clay County Park for damn near my whole 71 years. And mostly I handle the rodeo grounds down there, but this whole thing, when I found out about it, took me by surprise. Betty, you've got a lot of concerns, but I don't remember hearing them voiced at the park board meetings. Is that correct?
Yeah, so certainly some of them I did voice, and
others.
Yep, and I talked a lot to Carolyn Boutros, and I talked a lot to, I'm the new guy, right? And I certainly did ask for the bylaws many times, and talked a lot to Dick, who had a lot more experience. And, he was going to try to get the receipt books, talk to Carolyn Boutros. So I think I did some serious due diligence there.
Okay. Somebody gave the VDC pictures. Was the park board made aware of these problems?
Yeah, you'd have to ask the VCDC, because the first time I saw those pictures was here.
Was the park board made aware of those problems?
We can send you a year's worth of emails. Yeah.
Okay, and the last pictures they were made aware of?
The pictures, not specifically the pictures, the concerns about the cleanliness, the concerns about the day-to-day operation.
Okay, because that's something I don't know. Was the park board made aware that the commission was going to discuss this last week?
No.
They were not made aware?
Well, it was on the agenda.
But they were.
There was no personal communication.
Okay, so they did not know that something was up. It was on the agenda, but nobody in the park board was contacted, as in Terry Taggart or that, concern about what this was going to concern.
Yeah, maybe Travis, you can talk about that because I was actually, I was surprised it was on the agenda too. But so there was something that prompted it.
There was a lot of things that prompted it for me. And like I've explained to Dick, that when it either comes to other boards or the department heads, I let them run how they want.
Okay.
But when it gets dropped on my desk and I can't shuck it to somebody else, then I've got to fix it
Okay.
because I got to look how it's going to reflect on the county.
Okay. When
Since
you're
I've been
dealing-
chairman, and this is my
Excuse me.
7th year, last Thursday is the only time I've ever been able to contact the phone number at the park.
Okay.
They've never called me back.
Okay.
That's always been a problem for me. I'm getting the emails from the VCDC. I know that the board and the VCDC agreed to get an online registration form. And I'm looped into those emails and nothing is moving forward. Nothing's happening. I'm hearing that the board keeps meeting saying, yes, we need to do this. We need to keep going forward. But the staff isn't giving the information to the VCDC. I finally got a hold of Deb like a week and a half ago. Well, the Friday before we decided this. Said we need those online reservations or that reservation information. Can you get it to them? She's like, well, I already sent it to them. I was like, well, they don't have it. Can you resend it? She's like, yes, it's in an email. I don't know if you've received it yet. They hadn't. I told her they needed it on Friday. They hadn't received it by the following Tuesday. And
when you say they, the VDC,
the VCDC,
okay,
because they're trying to set up that bonfire
Mhm.
online registration. As far as taking knee-jerk reaction, we finally have their attention. I mean, I'm finally getting some answers. And Deb was more concerned about who I was and who I was working for than actually getting the information
Mhm.
to the VCDC. I don't want to take this on, but I have to protect the county and how it reflects on them. That is my biggest concern.
Okay.
The bookkeeping and if the rules are being followed at the campsite. I understand the tiki bars out there and that's state rules that you can't have that. Are there rules for ATVs at the campground and for the trails?
They're not allowed on the trails, although people don't always obey laws. I don't mean only the campgrounds, I know all over the place.
But they are allowed at the campground, just not on the trails. Is that correct?
Yeah, they have to be a licensed driver, and then the ATV has to have headlights, taillights, a horn, all the safety equipment. And, but yeah, no one under 14, obviously, because they got to be licensed.
Does the vehicle have to be licensed?
Yeah, golf carts, they don't. Like electric ones, you can't license, but
Okay.
usually the ATVs, most of them are licensed anyway. But yeah, that's kind of how we go.
Okay.
I guess it goes back to the basis of that question. As a lessee, is that right? Yeah. Yeah. A lessee, did they have any input in last week's meeting?
Not formally at the meeting, no.
Not formally at the meeting?
You have your representative, which is Betty, and Dick, are you on the park board or how?
Sorta.
So
I guess that would be,
but you had two commissioners who are also on the park board with a little bit of conflict of interest possibilities.
yeah.
But the park board was not present here, yet we were discussing the future of their lease. Are we missing somebody in that equation?
Well, if you were a renter on a house or a piece of farmland, the landlords don't call you and ask you if they can kick you out. They send you a letter certified. I mean, right or wrong, we didn't break any law. Maybe it wasn't the right way,
You bruised it a little bit.
but like,
Can I comment? I gotta run, so I just wanna comment real quick before I go. Number one, I don't think any commissioner here had a conflict of interest on this. In fact, I think that we have a direct interest in what happens here. So I don't think a commissioner voting on this issue was inappropriate in any respect. Number two, as you guys decide what you're going to do here today, you've terminated your lease. You provided that notice. I think the cleanest way to go about things is if you want to reinstigate that lease, the original one, that's what you would discuss with the park board, is applying that lease again. I'm sure they will comment as well, but I think the next component of that is that managerial piece to make sure that the county property is being appropriately managed through this agreement with the park board or with the park association. I don't know if your other partner in that is going to stay on. I feel as though I heard that pretty loud and clear last time, and maybe I misunderstood. But if you're going to stay with that, I think you need to look at how you're going to fix the problems that you have with that board, or are you going to go a different direction with management at that park? So I think those are the things, is where are you going with this? Because you've given notice that you've terminated the lease. So within 30 days, something new needs to be in place, whether it's going to be managing with the same entity that has done so thus far, negotiating with another entity for that purpose, or what you're going to do yourselves. But I wanted to leave that as a thought as you decide where you're going from here. But I don't think anyone had a conflict of interest. And I think you all were well within your right to provide notice of intent to terminate a lease.
Thank you. It's been on my mind.
And I also thank you. I had some notes here, but my chicken scratch is a little hard to read. Okay, so it was fine that they were not here. That's the politically correct way to approach it, in a policy way, I guess. The reservation system. Dick, do you know if that was turned in? I talked to Terry Taggart, and he said that it had been turned in. VDC or Dick, does either know?
Well, that was our impression on that Thursday afternoon, that Terry and Tony and I worked through filling in all the blanks on that agreement document. There was a spot where we needed to have a representative of the owners of the ground. That's the State of South Dakota Parks Department. So I ran that agreement on up to meet with Parks personnel. One of Shane's coworkers signed it for me. Then I brought it back right away. I just went out and back quickly to get it back as quickly as I could to Tony, who was going to email that immediately down to Texas to the Bonfire Company. A couple of days later, I have this thing from Bonfire Company that says, what's this deal we got this agreement back, but it's got all these things that are unanswered. And they were all the things that Terry and Tony and I worked through on that Thursday afternoon. And my interpretation is there's either that fully filled out document did not end up being sent to Bonfire, the reservation company, or there was a glitch in the email that it didn't get through, or the guys at Bonfire down there lost it in their process somewhere. But this was only a day later. This was about 24 hours later when the VCDC gave us notice that they wanted to get out of the agreement.
Does the VCDC know what was sent and when it was sent?
Sorry, just to clarify the question, are you asking me of the document that Dick had referred to?
In conjunction with Tony.
Yeah, the Bonfire document.
And it was going to be sent down to Bonfire.
Mm-hmm.
Was the correct document sent, and when was it sent?
So First of all, let me just double check. Was that document sent? That document was not sent because it was actually turned in incomplete. And so I actually would like to see what document the bonfire representative is referring to for clarification. Yeah.
If they work off Tony and they knew what was incomplete, they would have got their information. What did you miss that was incomplete? 3 people were.
Microphones, please.
Yeah. Go ahead and restate that question.
Dick stated that he and Terry and Tony worked on the document. They had blanks to fill in. He went and yanked it and got signatures signed, etc. Brought it back. What got left incomplete that they missed the first time they worked on it? And why wasn't the document checked when they brought it back for anything that was not incomplete?
I'm gonna let Tony reply back on your question of what wasn't complete in that. But I also do want to state before we go too far out here, I think a couple of the timelines that were just described in that is a little bit off. And so I want to offer the opportunity to go back to that, but I'll stick with your point of question. Okay, Tony's going to respond on basically the condition of this document that was one of the multiple things that we were asking for. One of the multiple things that the condition of this document that was turned into the VCDC and that was incomplete, and Tony's work in trying to finish completing that.
So the document that we're talking about right now, there's 2 documents that are required to sign up with Bonfire. One is an operational agreement, and that the VCDC did early on. The second one is a merchant processing agreement that gives Bonfire a way to legally account for the funds and get them deposited. And it was determined early on that it would be easiest, cleanest, and quickest for this the funds to be transferred directly into Clay County Park Board's fund rather than passing through the VCDC. So then it is the Clay County Park Board Association's, Parks Association's responsibility to fill out that paperwork. That paperwork sat in limbo for a little over 2 weeks, give or take 2 weeks. And multiple timelines were approaching very quickly, and we had not gotten information we needed from the park regarding reservations. We had not gotten information that we needed regarding the merchant processing agreement. Multiple deadlines were coming up. Nate had made it very clear to me to stay in touch with him on this as the situation evolved. Dick told me that he would be coming to the VCDC with Terry, and because of Terry's unsteadiness of hand and because of Dick's recent surgery, they were going to be unable to fill out the form. I thought it was coming in filled out. Dick said there's going to be a couple things we just need to finish. The form was largely unfilled out, and I took the time to sit with Dick and Terry to fill out. We filled out the form together, line by line, item by item, and got the initials where they needed to be. There was a few remaining items that were required. One of them is a picture of the property, a picture of the physical location of said business. And we discussed that I would need to go out to the park and get those pictures to email in with this document. Upon completion of this meeting, where we all, Dick and I both went through this document item by item, line by line, and checked to make sure nothing was missing. I told Nate that we do now have that document. That is one thing on our deadline that has been completed. Do you want me to send it in? And he said, wait, because there are a couple other items. We don't want to send this out and get Bonfire started on the processing of this and then have another hitch come up with one of these other deadlines. So wait 1 day before you send that in. And before that day could pass, the other deadlines were missed. So that document was never sent in to Bonfire in any way. So I'm quite confused as to what part of it was not filled out correctly or completely. It's kind of a mystery to me because that is still in a folder on my desk and was never sent.
And that's why Bonfire sent this one back to me. That's what I referred to last week, Nate. I said there was plenty of blame to go around, and I meant that because I know that all of these X's were accounted for during the meeting between Terry and Tony and I in your office downstairs by the front deal, because Terry doesn't like the elevator in your building apparently. And I took my car, this is things that I put my time and effort into this to make sure that this thing got done correctly. I took it up to Shane's representative, came back. I was there by 4:00, and you said you were going to email this off to Bonfire at that point. And I asked you, please send me it back. Terry and I both should have copies of the completed document with all the signatures. And I don't have that, so I don't have that to contribute to the conversation today. But that's all I meant, Nate. I did not mean to call into contention that VCDC was doing something nefarious here. All I was saying is that each of us makes mistakes. It could be that VCDC was part of that, because I did not get my copy back. That's my fault. I made a mistake there. I went through a lot. The earliest that I was really able to get out and drive around, after my surgery, I came to take care of this. Now, we could have had Betty do it earlier, but we waited for me to be able to do this post-surgery. That's why it got pushed back to Thursday afternoon. Actually, it's postponed 1 or 2 because Terry had some sort of a conflict and you had a conflict, I think, on Wednesday. So it got pushed kind of to the last minute because of that. And I meant no negative information on the VCDC. I've been a member of our organization for a couple decades now. And so I'm a part of VCDC too. And I meant no harm there. I felt you kind of went off on me. And I didn't know that. I felt like that that you were picking on me a little bit there. And I don't know that was, I know that sometimes a person will get a little heated if you think that you've been accused of something.
Yeah.
I'm looking for answers to that question. Why did this not happen?
Yeah. So what I know that there are a lot of issues here, but what I'd love to do is sort of go back to Bill's questions. And I don't know if you have any more.
Just a couple of brief ones.
Good. Okay. Go ahead.
And I'd like to hear from Andy too.
I just want to go on record and say I strongly support the reservation system. It's going to be real time, should eliminate the people saying, I didn't get in because nobody didn't answer the phone. And or people are going to get in and some of the same people are not going to get in because we're probably not going to say, oh, I want to go next Friday. I'm going to call for a reservation now. That's humans. We do that. But I do support the reservation system. The other thing, right now, it's been brought up, there's a lot of volunteer work down there. I do a lot of volunteer work with equipment, fuel, spray. I have worked on the trails down there. I went down during chemo 2 years ago and trimmed all the branches off overhanging the trail and cleaned them up. I was a tired son of a gun when I got done.
And I've included you in that.
I have dug big tree limbs down by where people would go around. They do not trail close, and I mean big stuff down to keep people away from the river. You can't fix stupid, and some people don't think they have to obey any law or anything. But I guess my feeling is, yes, you can break a lease. But I thought that without saying, this is why, or this is what we need done to the people, it meets the letter of the law. But I didn't think that's how Midwest worked on a lot of things, but if you obey the law, you're good. If you want to go ahead and give any consideration of their party, it's not against the law either. So I think the ball got dropped a little bit there, but it's legal. Going forward, I don't know how you're going to run it. I don't know how you'll get to talk to the gentleman from the gun club. I don't know how you'll do the boat ramp. I don't know how you'll do the rodeo grounds. Are there going to be restrictions? Are we going to get any help? The county has sprayed in there once or twice. I sprayed a heck of a lot more. They have mowed in there. I've mowed a lot more. We've done work in the arena, and it needs work, continual work. We've trimmed, we've mowed, like I say, both the rotary mower and the small one. We try to keep it booked. And that can be a serious bone of contention. We got in trouble with the Clay County 4-H Saddle Club that wanted it 2 days a week for 4 months. And we found out that, some had already been reserved, even though they'd been made aware that they were supposed to reserve it. And when we did find out that for 2 months, or for 2 months of that, they don't use it, the last 2 months, July and August. And in May, they wanted it 2 days every week. They finally got down there last weekend. And there are other dates that they didn't need it for, and other times they can't even sure if they're there. This is from the leader of the club, because I don't know if the kids will show up.
So you're saying we can have troubles with reserving just one place?
Yeah, it can come up there, yeah. So, depending upon restrictions, what changes, I've got a lighted arena at home. But we go down and take care of that one. Do we use it? Yes, everybody can use it. We keep it worked up so people can use it. Right now, you can't work it up. It's a mud hole. That's okay. We'll work on that again. I've worked on it in the past. So everybody can use it. It's made aware, people are aware of it. But if you put a lot of restrictions there, my feeling is who's going to work it up, who's going to trim it, who's going to mow it, who's going to spray it, who's going to keep things cleaned up. After the native ride was here, I talked to them. VDC talked to them. I went down and talked to them. Purpose good. They said, what about trash? I said, just bag it up. I'll pick it up. And I did. I got there a day late. Trash had blown over. It wasn't their fault. It was mine because I was a day late. And I picked it all up, took it down to the campground, put it in a dumpster. It was great. They were nice. But yeah, it needs to be used like that. And they never charged a thing for it. I don't think they should be. It was good. We have events down there. We'll bring 50 to 60 rigs in with people. And I know that they do stop at Bunyan's. I've seen trailers there. They stop at Walmart. They stop at Hy-Vee. I've been in there and seen them. And I'm going to bet, I know some of them did stop at the new running store out there. And just to highlight on running, so while I work there, you talked about one toilet, somebody had spread excrement around. That happens in businesses too. The other day, somebody went back and somebody had brown washed the walls of the restroom. So you're not alone down there that happening. And I've also seen it happen with the Clay Union. Some people are not nice, but that concludes my comments. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. VDC, I appreciate the work on it. It sounds like there's a lot of bobbling on two ends there maybe, but that's under the bridge now. Can it be resurrected? It would seem that it should be able to, but it'll have to be resurrected underneath whatever way you decide you're going to go. Thank you for your time.
And Bill is a board member of the Clay County Parks Association.
I'd
Al,
like
we're
to
letting
make-
you percolate for quite a while too.
Oh, we wanted to hear from Andy also.
Yes.
Before I make.
So you want, well, I can tell you, my experience somewhat with this, I was a member, I don't know if I'm still a member of the park board. You know, I stopped attending meetings several years ago when I started having a schedule conflict with the Dakota Hospital Foundation. I got Chief Deputy Paul Pearson took my place on that because it's nice to have sheriff's representative on that. That isn't why I was on that. I got on the Park Association because of my involvement with the Rodeo Club. When we approached the Park Association to rebuild the rodeo grounds, and it was called Coyote Country Rodeo Club. We built that rodeo grounds that you see out there. Park Association put up the money for the arena and the large bleachers, and the Rodeo Club members, about 10 to 15 people, spent our weekends out there for a couple of years and built that arena. Over time, the membership dwindled, and then we stopped having the annual Bullarama. At that time, we had a management agreement with the Park Association to manage the rodeo grounds and took care of it. And we reinvested every penny we earned, putting on that Bullarama back into that rodeo grounds. But then we turned the management back over to the Park Association, and Bill's family kind of adopted it and took good care of the place since then. And so that was my involvement with the Park Association. So I've been attending park board meetings before there was a campground. They called it the Circle. There was a little road that kind of went around in there. There was no improved campsites, no electricity, no water. I think there was a hydrant or two down there. But so anyway, my involvement goes back a good 25 plus years. And so I was there before they had the campground host or the manager, whatever you want to call. So I can tell you a lot of history as to how we got where we are today. I don't think there's anybody on the Park Association except maybe Mike Cheney that was there before me. And I don't know if Mike still attends or not.
Yeah, Mike's the recording secretary, and Terry Taggart is the president.
Yeah, I was on it before Terry came on, and Terry came on along with Bill Wilroth quite a few years ago when Bill was a county commissioner. Thought it was a shame that the Park Association had so much money from the farmland rental and wasn't improving the park. And Bill just kind of took the bull by the horns and saw to it that we had a relationship with the state parks and set up the campground. So, I mean, Bill was the driving force for that, and Terry Taggart kind of at his side. Eventually Terry took over for Bill as president. And, but Mike's the guy that would know more than anybody. He's been on that Park Association longer than anybody. But we really found that with the sheriff's office, me sitting in there, it was nice to know when the park was going to be open, nice to know when the gate was going to be closed and what was going to go on. But I kind of always taken a position that we're not going to be the park ranger. We're not going to collect fees. We're not going to deal with that sort of thing unless that's what the county commission wants us to do. And if so, then I need more help. And that's never been asked of me, and it's been working out just fine. We go down there as available. Deputies try to patrol through there and be seen. And we don't enforce, camp rules, if you want to say that. Every now and then people will call us and complain that there's an open site they want, but the campground manager won't let them have the site. That's not for us to decide. The deputies don't have that authority. If there's not a law being broken, we don't really have any authority down there. So we defer to the campground manager to make that decision. Usually ends up, they either work it out or the camper leaves. And it happens, it goes both ways. Sometimes it goes either way. The calls we tend to get down there are really either from the campground manager upset with a camper, or a camper upset with the campground manager. And that's probably a 50-50 deal. And again, if there's no law being broken, we just mediate that and let the campground manager, he's the guy that's there to enforce the rules. But if people have complaints about that, we always say, well, call the Park Association, call Terry Taggart, or go to the county commission. So that's kind of how we manage the issues down there. There are actual crimes that take place down there. We do have occasional driving complaint, kids on a four-wheeler, things like that. Now and then an assault, pretty rare. It's generally fairly peaceful down there in terms of our involvement. So I don't know if you have any other questions, but I answered them.
No, I think that was a good synopsis of your involvement there. And I think just the drive-throughs are a big deal to help kind of tamp down folks that we don't necessarily want to be there, or be maybe doing some illegal activities or buying and selling and
Yeah.
whatever, I think just having you come through in the evenings helps tamp that down, as well as having management on site. I think that's a big deal.
And maybe I'll offer a little clarification on that. The campground manager didn't give up his home to come down there. He was many years ago, I would say in the very early 90s, the Park Association allowed the game warden to move his trailer down there. He couldn't find a site, and they decided, and I think it was a good decision, that it would be good for the park to have some presence down there besides the occasional patrol. So the game warden that lived in town at that time had a trailer house. Him and his family moved in there, and this was at the playground area to the north. And he kept it down there till he eventually moved away. Then there was no trailer there, and then there was a city police officer that approached the park board, and they thought, well, yeah, it's nice to have law enforcement down there. So a city police officer lived down there for a while. Then he moved away. Then there was no trailer. When the campground manager started working with Terry, and they decided, well, he'd have a season-long site at the campground, that was decided it was going to be beneficial for everyone to have somebody down there all the time. And then he volunteered a lot of hours into improving that campground just for the free site for the season. Then it kind of came up, well, he's living in a trailer in town. Why doesn't he move it out there? So that's what they did. So he moved his trailer out there for the site, and then he'd stay there year round. So that's kind of how that evolved. And then over time, the campground manager said, well, it'd be nice if I had some sort of official designation. And they put up a sign, they got him a shirt, magnetic signs for the vehicle, gives them some authority. And that really was kind of helpful. It kind of helped us too, because that way he could kind of put out small fires without us having to respond.
And, I agree with that. My understanding was that Terry had asked him to move his trailer down there. It was Terry's idea, not necessarily Al's to do that.
I think so too.
Yeah. And for that reason, the same reason they asked the earlier folks to stay down there, to have a on-site residential presence, I think is pretty important. And going forward, we should, even if we got to spend a little money on it, I think that's an important part of maintaining security and order in the park.
And I should also mention that, we do get calls also complaining about the reservation issues, people saying they can't reserve. My brother Steve was Nate's predecessor. He was pushing hard to get a reservation system going. And what we found were people in town that camped were strongly opposed to reservation. They said, this is our campground. We don't want people reserving the sites. And we actually saw the park board grow with people that used the campground that wanted to keep the reservation system from happening. And so there was quite a bit of opposition to the reservation system by the campers, the local campers that didn't want people from somewhere else to get the site before they could get it. So, and then we do get complaints about, well, the park's closed, the gate's closed, but yet there's people camping in there. It looks like we've got a family reunion happening in there. I don't have an answer to tell people to that. When they call complaining about that, all I know is there's no law being broken, and I don't have any authority to change that. And so again, we refer people to the Park Association or to the County Commission for that. And I don't know how often you guys, obviously you haven't more recently, but that's another type of issue that we've had, is that the park manager's space has really grown into quite a community there. And but that's happened over time, over quite a few years now.
Yeah, and I think that's something that everybody's heard, that it seems to be. Yeah. Yeah. Well, messy and no policy that's being followed. So as a result, it's hard for Carrie and, the VCDC and Travis and you guys, everybody who gets phone calls, because, we don't have a set policy. I think there are a lot of angry people out there. And that's, I think that's what prompted, Travis putting it on the agenda last week was, that the phone calls he was getting.
If you don't mind. We do have a policy. We apportioned it second to the last board meeting that we're gonna have something like a certain number of seasonals. There would be their seasonals and monthlies, which is about not quite a third, about 1/4 of the total number of campgrounds. Then there was going to be a certain number that were for reserves, and a certain numbers would be first come, first serve. And they're roughly 1/3, but it's quite obvious that that's probably cause it is a policy, and it's a policy that's caused maybe made more friction instead of reducing friction like we intended.
Yeah, I think I was at that meeting where the association voted on the number of sites that would be allocated to each use. And then Shane, you had a meeting afterwards because the park management was angry about that. And maybe you can tell us what was decided at that meeting. Yeah.
And that's a meeting I missed altogether, that one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we discussed that with the park manager, and Terry was at that meeting as well and got that breakdown. And we actually had the actual site numbers listed so that could be passed on to.
And we all have that up here now too, I think. So.
Yeah. So that was agreed upon at that secondary meeting, and you know what? The first come, first serve thing is a tricky thing. We dealt with that at Lewis and Clark. Had some folks, local folks that initially we went on this is back in 95 before I was there, but everything was on reservations. And then there was kind of some outcry and that was changed. And we did have a first come, first serve area, but that first come, first serve area was about 80% of our management of the campground it took to manage that area. People waiting for numbers. And then at 4 o'clock, we'd have a drawing every day. So that I like all reservations. And what cured that, we went to same day reservations for our first come, first serve area. So they can call at 7 a.m. every day. And if a site's open, they can take that. And that's really helped out. The rest of our sites are on that 90 days. We don't have any year-round sites or seasonal sites or monthly sites. 2 weeks, 14 nights is all the longer somebody can stay. And if we had all seasonal sites, they'd all be gone. We got over 1,000 campsites outside of the park now that we didn't have just 20 years ago. So they're continuing to build those, put more pressure on our day use facilities, bathrooms and boat ramps and those type of things. So, but the fairness of the 2-week stay, they can move to another park and stay one night and then come back another 2 weeks. But that way somebody can't just, put down stakes and be there the whole summer. So, but if you have a portion of those and it's a drawing every year, that could work out too. Not totally against that, but to have the same people have it every year, that's not fair.
Yeah.
So if you were to give us your sage advice from all your years of experience, what advice would you give us on proceeding from here?
Well, my advice would be, if you could somehow reorganize it, still have the board, because you have a lot of entities with the rodeo grounds and the shooting range, and it's probably going to be more than a subcommittee wants to do, but some kind of reorganization and make sure the bylaws are set and move forward. Try to get that reservation system going. I think that's going to alleviate a lot of problems and work towards having somebody there, to deal with problems as they come up. And that would be day and night, whether you have campground ranger hired to help at night and you have somebody there during the day, that type of thing. There's ways that can all be accomplished, and we're always willing to help out with that too. So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, I think our bylaws are way outdated. They're very complete, they're exhaustive, but I think they're outdated.
Yeah. So maybe a reasonable way to go forward would, you know, be to, I know June 3rd is the annual meeting of the association. And Travis, you'll have to tell me how comfortable you'd be with this, given what's gone on. But, you know, one way of doing it would be to have that June 3rd meeting and think of it as not only electing board members. There are a lot of board members to elect, because when I called through to try to get a quorum for the vote at the last meeting, a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say a lot, several people said, you know, I never go to those meetings, you know, and everybody had a reason. Oh, you know, I golf on Thursday night, or, you know, I won't go to that campground anymore. I won't deal with those people. I mean, everybody had a different reason, but we have probably six slots, I think. And we probably need some organizational power on there, like people who you know, are you know, somebody else who's got some financial acumen, and then create a work plan to, you know, do policies, like financial policies and procedures that have to be followed. You know, we probably need an audit committee, you know, that annually goes through and tests transactions and so on. I mean, sort of all the normal things that nonprofit associations do, and, you know, get some energetic board members to fill the places of the people who no longer are interested or come. And most importantly, I mean, it would be absolutely critical to start immediately to, you know, have reservation information that the treasurer can, you know, and we need a budget, right? So we need to take last year's numbers and figure out how much we're paying for things, and, you know, organize it into, you know, like maintenance and salaries and so on. You know, I think it's a huge amount of work. I don't think it's impossible, but, you know, it'll take some real energy, and it will require, I mean, this has been the biggest issue since I joined the board. It would require cooperation from the camp management. And that's what's really been lacking. I mean, that's really why I think the VCDC stepped away and said, no, we're not doing the reservation system, because every time they asked for information, you know, 2 weeks later, we would have to have another meeting, and the park management would say, yeah, we'll do that. And then 2 weeks later, we'd have to have another meeting, and that kind of went on. And so there would have to be some understanding on the part of the park management that they would follow the rules of the, you know, they would follow policies and procedures. They would, you know, produce numbered receipts, and that the treasurer could use to create records. So we would be able to see things like, when is the campground fully used? When are there empty spaces? Should we, based on our records, you know, change the number of spaces that are available, first come, first serve versus, you know, and I mean, those numbers changed after the association voted, because the management said, no, we don't want to do that. We want more first come, first serve spaces. So I think it has to be that the management agrees that the association is the controlling body that creates the financial policies and procedures. And, you know, so I know that that's a lot of change, but, you know, I so admire the history of this park and the people who have put so much blood and sweat and money and time, you know, into this park. It's a really beautiful thing. But it can't go on the way it's gone on. I mean, it just can't. Too many unhappy people.
You know, mine, I was going to suggest in you know, my parents, when they retired, they became work campers full time. They would work in campgrounds up north in the summers and in Texas in the winters. And then eventually they got older and they stayed in Texas year round. So we would go visit them in the campgrounds where they lived full time. So I got to get some experience with how that all works. But I can tell you that these campgrounds have rules
They have established rules, like, for example, the number of campers on a site. We go down there and we'll see 2 and 3 campers on a site. That's not my job to decide that's okay or not okay, but in a lot of places that's not okay. And especially when you get those seasonal people that are there all year and it becomes their own yard, and there's not a lot of rules on them. But I know the work campers in the campgrounds where my parents have been, they have more rules on them than the campers do. They have to abide by all the rules the campers do. And then they have additional rules because they're there all the time. You know, they can't have wooden porches. They can't have, you know, mildew on their awnings, and there's a age requirement of the units that they have. They have to be fairly new, and that all, because it's detrimental to the campground if their hosts are in a rundown camper, and or parking, where are cars allowed to park, and then the cars have to be in the designated spots, and so those rules would apply to the hosts as well as the campers that are there. And so I think that any reorganization or any moving forward, I would recommend some rules to be, you know, governing the people on the campground, including the hosts as well as the campers. Not to say I want to be running down there and enforcing them, but when there's nothing, it doesn't give us, it's really hard to mediate that other than to ask somebody to leave.
Yeah, one of the really great things that the VCDC did was Tony came with a list of all those questions to the association meeting and asked the group all those questions. And there were decisions made, right? How many campers on a site, how many, you know, like, could there be a camper in a car? How many? And so all of those decisions were made, but I'm not sure that they're being abided by. And so that's, I mean, that's a big issue. You know, we've got to have not only rules, but also, you know, the willingness to, you know, to enforce them, particularly the ATV rules. I mean, it just, those are really a big safety problem.
Well, it involves going down and checking on it, and I've been doing that.
Mhm.
I think we've neglected Al. And I think Travis is getting antsy. So we should let Al have a say at least here. Is your mic on?
I believe it is.
Buttons up?
Push it up. Oh, turned it
There
up.
you go.
Okay. All right. So I'm Al Markheim. I'm the current president of the Vermilion Pistol Club. And my priorities are, you know, the continued existence of the club. I've been a member of clubs that no longer exist for a variety of reasons. I don't want to see that happen here. And to have a good lease with whatever organization we need to have that lease with. When I became president of the Vermilion Pistol Club, the first thing I did was to get a lease in place with the park board. We'd existed for years without a lease. So that became the priority, and our current lease runs through January of 2026. So one of the reasons I'm here was to ask, what's going to happen with our lease if you continue on and the park board no longer is subleasing for us to sublease from? So those are my priorities: the club to continue to exist and to have a lease that permits us to have some confidence that the money that we're investing in the club in improvements is going to have some long-term impact. We don't want to be bringing in more dirt, building buildings and things such as that, only to have the club cease to exist as it currently exists at some short time in the future. So this has been very educational for me this morning. I'm glad I was able to come. Normally, Bruce Plate would have been here. I think many of you know Bruce. He's on the park board. He's the treasurer of the Pistol Club. He knows a lot of the history. He was out of town for Memorial Day and couldn't make it. But I would have been here regardless. But if you have questions about history of the club and activities and stuff, Bruce is the man I normally turn to. So I have no vested interest in which organization we lease from. From what I hear this morning, it sounds like for the county to take it on would be a lot of work and require a lot of time and effort. And so I just personally, I like the idea of fixing the problems with the existing organization and going forward. But regardless, if we wind up having to, take out another lease with the county, then we will eagerly work to do that. And I do hope that there will be, that a long-term decision will be made sometime soon, so that the Pistol Club can make plans about spending money on some of the improvements we want to make this summer. So that's all I had to say this morning, and I'm certainly available for questions if anyone has any.
Okay. And so this has been a long discussion, and, I'd like to hear from the VCDC where you are at this point.
I appreciate it, and I have to note that we do have an appointment at 11 o'clock, and I do have to depart at that. So I don't want to rush into anything, but I do want to make that note. Also, I just want to apologize if I do have to leave in the middle of the conversation, and that I have to leave due to that appointment. I believe, to answer your question, I have to simply say that I'm afraid we're probably at the same position we were a week ago. I think there's a couple notes of some details here that are a little bit, whether it be differing opinion, or simply, maybe a better way to put it is a great example of the cluster of management challenge that you have, the challenge. And that is the reason that we were here in that position last week. I want to also note a couple points, as we were here in that condition on Tuesday last week as a courtesy and as a true partner to ensure that we could offer the ability to answer any questions that you might have. We were at a point the week prior on Friday, because many of these conversations and details that we've kind of gone through have been details and conversations and efforts that the VCDC has put forward. If I could, I would simplify this. From my perspective, we are an extremely organized and staffed organization. We have the systems when it comes to the accounting. We have the systems of management. We also have the systems of volunteer engagement and management and accountability that we feel we could actually help make those problems go away, and make them go away relatively quickly. At the same point, the challenge that we're at right now is that we have put far too much time into the current status. And so respectively, our patience, or another way to put it, our resources have been depleted when it comes to that. I cannot continue putting the VCDC resources towards the same problems that we have had for this long, especially if we don't see true effort, and I mean that respectfully, to actually change them. And I have to say, we don't have the resources to support a restructure of a very dysfunctional nonprofit. So if wanting to revitalize that board is of the interest of this commission, I respect that, but I'm respectfully telling you that the VCDC will not be participating as a partner, because we don't have the resources. Quite again, we've used them up. We've used them up with quite a bit of time of inaction. And so I can't do that. Again, I'm offering you that we can take care of the accounting. We can take care of the reporting. As I mentioned, if there is a volunteer, if there is a staff, if there is a management, if there is a host that wants to participate with what the vision of what you want and the accountability of what you want, the VCDC can hold that accountable. But if there are individuals who do not want the change of which you are trying to implement, as in good treatment of your campers, fair treatment of reservation systems, respectful professionalism amongst partners, if you have people who want to fight that and you want to keep them on, I'm afraid that Whoever is managing that organization is making the choice to do that. We don't make that choice anymore. Like I said, we've depleted all of our resources. We can't work with an entity that makes that much effort in not making effort. And I simply say that with a broken heart. We absolutely love the campground down there. We absolutely love this county. We absolutely love this commission and all of those. But we are a nonprofit as well. We are a very strong nonprofit, even when our fellow members can take a good licking from me and still pay their dues. I appreciate that, Dick, because we stand for that accountability. And I'm sorry, but the function down there has depleted all of its resources. So again, if you want to go and fix that house, I respectfully say, you know, we're cheering you on, but we have no more resources to provide in the BCDC. Again, we're in the same situation. We're stepping away, and we wish you all the best. I think you have the email of Bonfire, and keep moving forward. If you need us to help manage that, I stand by my statement of saying, we do not state problems without offering to fix them. And if the comments, I think like I said, I could summarize them. I think Betty makes some real good point of everything that she listed. We can do that on day one. It's accounting, it's accountability, it's engagement, it's accountability to this commission that takes the overall responsibility of that. But if you wanted to, and I agree, you do have a big project on your hands if you take it on your hands, and also rebuilding a board. And the thing I would offer, again, managing a nonprofit organization and being the one who manages that organization, it is very tough to find volunteers all the time. So by recreating or reinvesting into a nonprofit, a different nonprofit board, there's a good chance your resources, those resources will be depleted as well. And I grow concerned about that. And that's why I can't invest our time and assets into that project. I can invest our time and assets into trying to fix the problem. So respectfully, we're at about the same place we were, but I'm more than happy to answer any other questions. There are a couple points from the discussion earlier that I would like to clarify, but like I said, I don't want to rehash different things. But like I said, we come to you with the intent of being true partners, but we also come to you with a good load of stuff on our plate. So we take very serious accountability. We take very serious time. 2.5 hours of this conversation, and in 3 minutes, I have to get a targeted industry report, because we're in charge of trying to bring business. Now, I can set and direct our resources to make this efficient. I really can, but I cannot set our resources to start back at the beginning when we are already 10 yards ahead of you. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lane.
I just want to make a couple statements since my name was brought up a couple times here. One, I sent Dick an email. If you did try to call me, your name never came up on any of my phones. It's not like I was trying to dodge you.
Sorry. No,
yeah,
I was gonna give it another try, but no problem. No problem.
I just sent you an email as well, and a lot of the things have been covered. In my opinion, we got two different issues. We have a park board issue and a management issue. And one really is, I mean, restructuring the park board probably needs to be done. And I like the idea of kicking everybody off, including me. Putting application process off or on, sorry. Putting in requirements of board members to the point where you have to attend at least 50% of the meetings a year. You're required to put in time down at the park volunteering each year. That way the people on the board have a working knowledge of what's going on down there for the decisions that they make. The other part is the park management. And in my opinion, that's where all these issues are stemming from. What happens with that happens. But in any case, the park board makes the rules, the manager abides by the rules and enforces the rules. That's my personal problem with taking the grandkids down there. It's not the campers that are there. I think for the most part, they're all the same, no matter if you go to White Crane or wherever. People are just there to enjoy themselves and not cause problems with their neighbors. My problem is when you're told you can only have one camper on a spot, and then you look over and there's two parked on a spot. And the two campers are friends of the park manager. That's a problem. You know, when the park manager has a lot of people at their camper, which is fine, community, whatever, but the amount of alcohol can be an issue at times. And again, not that nobody should drink or anything like that down there, but when your job is to resolve issues, there's a certain an established thing. And again, personally, I don't think the park manager should have alcohol in their site, because you never know what is going to occur. Again, that's all my opinion. That's what it is. But if you got any questions for me about other things, feel free to email me. Don't want to take up any more meeting time. So thank you.
Thank you, Lane.
Yeah, so I think in some ways we've been kind of dancing around the question of park management all this week and last week. And I'm wondering, Dick, if and Bill, if you can talk about park management issues in a constructive way. In other words, what can the association do to ensure park management that complies with park rules and accountability and providing receipts to the treasurer and so on. And for me, that really is that's the big question, because with the reservation system, that's been the problem from day one. And so if the two of you can speak to that, I would feel a lot more comfortable, in making a decision.
Is the park manager under any kind of contract whatsoever?
Not that I know of. No, I'm not privy to that. I think that that being said, I think that both you and I have worked towards getting the park management working and living according to the rules. You by bringing up stuff at the meetings about accountability, you've gotten the bylaws to out. You've gotten the historical documents of the parks group out. I've been going on the ground and taking all those darn pictures and inspecting it and visiting with the park manager, saying, giving him feedback, and he's immediately taking care of those issues with me. I think it ends up being a matter of having some diligence and keeping at it on both our parts, as well as, Bill's got an oar in the water. He's a board member. Bruce Plate's a board member, and he has had an oar in the water. So you can't just go to board meetings once a month and expect to oversee an operation, like that. You have to go on the ground and have a look. I stayed there for a few weeks last year. That was part of the reason for that. There were some complaints, and I went up to Lions Park and stayed for a while. Granted, I was without a house for that period of time, so I had to go somewhere anyway. But those were opportunities for me to see on the ground as a camper how the place was being operated, and go to Lions as a counterpoint. But frankly, I much preferred going into the bathrooms out at the park than at Lions Park.
So can anybody tell me how many board members are there?
14 when it's fully staffed.
Right, but it's not,
How
so
many attend the meetings?
Oh, 8,
maybe,
yeah.
depends.
See, we need at least 7 to have a quorum.
And is
So-
there anything?
And we don't
if
have a
there's 30
quorum.
Meetings and you're off the board
Pardon me?
on bylaws of any organization that I've been on, if you
There
miss
are.
3 meetings, you're off.
I think it's 3 or 4. I don't remember the
Yeah,
number. What's
it's,
the number?
it is in the minutes, but the problem is that, I'm sorry, in
It's
the
in
bylaws, but the problem is that nobody, nobody has had the bylaws. And so we sort of forgot what the annual meeting was this year and missed it. And, I guess my biggest concern is this, that the person who does the actual park supervision and the only person who can hire and fire and help improve park management is the president of the board. And it requires, I think, a president of the board who's able to really be on it. And so I think the informal suggestion I'd make here is the park board is going to meet for its annual meeting on June 3rd.
Thursday.
And this Thursday at 6 o'clock. And I would, was it 6 or 12? I don't remember.
It's at
I'll have to
night.
look. Well, it's usually 6 o'clock at night, but we were talking about moving to noon meeting. I mean, that's one of the other problems is that I don't find out about meetings. I mean, we don't get phone calls. We don't, meetings get set.
I
and-
make those calls, don't I, Bill?
Yeah, you do. I mean, so in other words, there's a very informal system and not everybody on the
here.
board knows that a meeting's happening. So it's not necessarily that somebody is being, skipping their responsibilities. Sometimes it's that, I know Carolyn Boutros, the treasurer, there were a few meetings she missed because she didn't know about them. So, so a lot of these problems, right, are on the president of the association. And, so I, what I would like to do is, if people were willing, is to put this decision off until next week with the idea that we can see what happens at the annual meeting, and see if there's a, what the board is able to come up with. Does that make,
Well,
Does-
where I'm at is I'm not ready to pull the letter back that we sent.
right,
We have everybody's attention now.
agreed.
We know there's good things happening. We know there's problems that need to be fixed. We need to address those. As far as the gun club or the rodeo grounds, if anything, if we take over the 1st of July, I want that to be a seamless transition to where you guys wouldn't even notice. I don't want to do this long-term. That has never been my intention of this. There are issues that need to be addressed, and I think we're getting narrowed down to what they are. And it's just if anybody actually wants to say out loud what the problem is. But I think they can be addressed maybe either at the annual meeting that I think they should still have. And then question, is 14 people on a board? That seems excessive.
That's a great plenty.
I mean, to actually get anything done. And I mean, I haven't been on that board, so I don't know. I mean, Bill's on because I would assume because of the rodeo ground, Bruce Plate's on because of the shooting club. I mean, how many other people and Andy, I think you said Paul's on there for your.
Paul's on, yeah.
So I mean, I know there's people that should be on there. Maybe they're not voting members. I don't know. Or maybe you just, I don't know. That's something for that annual meeting to decide, but
That's
I
what I
think
mean by
14
the-
is too many. And
Yeah.
It's
I-
not particularly too many if you have the correct people in the slots. You need a business manager type.
Yeah, there are board members I've never
a
met.
lawyer
Quite
to
a few
keep
of
you
them.
on track.
And that's what I mean by the bylaws need to be updated. We need to make some basic changes because there's place on there for both voting and non-voting members of the association. So going forward, I know there are structural issues right there that should be easy to fix. And I think that that's probably one of the first things we should address even Thursday.
And
In
hopefully the VCDC would, you know, allow us to use them for the reservation and the accounting part at a minimum to get that under control. Somebody's going to have to be on top of that 24/7.
Yeah, I think we actually have an excellent treasurer who, I mean, you can see her statements, but she can only write down information that she has. And park management has refused to give her, I mean, I've been at a meeting when it's been discussed and she has said, you know, the park manager has said, oh, no, I take care of that. I'm not gonna put that on you. I'm just gonna take care of that. And so it has come up at association meetings, but the association has been willing to, I don't know, I guess,
And
allow
I missed
it.
that
But
altogether.
yeah, well,
Sounds like
so-
management, park management needs a job description.
I wasn't there during that. I know that. So that's an issue that I remembered.
But even if the VCDC wants to step away, maybe the treasurer somebody needs to run Bonfire, the
Yeah.
reservation system. The board is obviously in agreement with the current board, the park board, they're in agreement with putting it in place. I'm still trying to figure out, it should be narrowed down to who's at fault by this time. I mean, it's been 4 months that they've agreed to do it. It should be narrowed down to they're not following through or they're not following through. That should be narrowed down by now. But we're not getting there.
Yeah, it's pretty clear actually that it's park management who has not provided what's necessary in order for the VCDC to upload and make live the platform. That is very, very, very clear to me.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna talk vague because we know it's gotta be fixed. And I don't wanna lay blame anymore because we're past blame.
I'm with you.
We're to, this is what we're gonna do to fix. That's where we need to go next. So,
I agree. I don't necessarily agree with Betty's characterization, but it's, because I know that guys have been to, the parks management guys have been to bonfire training. And whether they picked up enough to carry it out, I don't know. I have not done bonfire training myself. I'd be at a loss.
yeah, I have no idea how to do it.
Yeah, and that probably, I mean, in my opinion, the bonfire system needs to be run by a different person than the person who is handling transactions on site, right? In other words, it's the treasurer who needs to be able to control and download. I mean, so in internal control systems, and I'll apologize, I taught this stuff, right? Public budgeting and fiscal management for 17 years, 3 times a year. And it's a different person takes in the money and writes the receipt than the person who actually downloads the information from the bonfire system. It's got to be the treasurer who balances the books at the end of the month. You know, it's the way that they do it in banks, right? A teller never controls what happens to the money, and he always hands out a receipt. And so that's the kind of system we need. It can't be the same person handling all parts of the transaction. There has to be somebody separate running the bonfire system from the person on the ground.
Well, and you'll have to help me here, Tony, or Nate. Bonfire you wouldn't have to have anything at the campsite. They just have to be able to go online with a debit card or a credit card, correct?
Right.
And there'd be no cash transactions. And then we wouldn't have to take checks. We wouldn't have to worry about a bad check. Is that possible? Does it work that way?
Yeah, all you need is a wireless device. Yeah.
Yeah. So Shane, maybe you could speak to that because you're running a reservation system. What's the role of cash and checks in your system?
We do get a few that make reservations that pay when they come to the park. We don't prefer that. We'd rather them use cards. Checks are definitely the last resort. We get a few of those and self-pay. And then when you, like they're buying a daily license for $8 and then you have to pay 60 to collect 8, it just doesn't make business sense. So we would rather not take any checks at all.
Do you take cash?
Yes, we do take cash.
And how do you account for the cash? What's your cash management system?
That is through our reservation system, that we are able to make deposits off of that. And then we deposit that cash, do daily deposits for each place of business, White Crane, Pearson Ranch, Lewis and Clark, you know. And then we have cash stores set up for each of our employees. So we have really good accounting that way. But I think, you know, having 2 separate people is great because you always want accountability. And that would be a good way to set it up.
Just one more thing. I got to go to another meeting here in like 10 minutes, but with the annual meeting coming up, one of the things, and I assume it's still true, but there used to be family members of the park manager on the park board.
Still true.
Okay, so, you know, the oversight, there's a conflict of interest there, in my opinion. But again, I quit going to meetings for reasons. So we'll leave it at that. But also, I think the reservation system is a must. And I think 100% of the spots should be on that reservation system. When you have the, you know, the come out and see kind of stuff, you could potentially have, you know, spots open that nobody knows about. I've been told by other county employees that the cabin, they would, if they would have been able to know and look online without packing up all their stuff to go out and see, they would have rented the cabin on a weekend. You know, that kind of stuff. It's more about convenience for all than 10 people being able to build a deck and park their camper there all year, you know. And I think that's where a lot of the, and favoritism is probably not the right word, but there are people who get things easier than others. And part of that is the board not keeping the manager to enforce the rules. So anyway, I love the reservation system. I just think it needs to be 100%. And that will take care of all the accounting issues as well. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, and so I think we do need to address the conflict of interest issue, because having employees sit on the board, multiple employees sit on the board, is, you know, who are also being paid by the association is an issue.
I was just going to comment, and you know, it sounds like you're going to wait till after the annual meeting to really make any hard decisions, but I hope that keeping the VCDC engaged will happen at least through that period, because you know, I mentioned how long this has been going on, and they've just been struggling to get traction on the reservation system for so many years now, and to see them getting this close to, you know, they've been doing that against opposition, not apathy. There's people just in the way to the reservation system for so long, and I commend Nate for sticking with it this long, and you know, I agree with Lane. I think 100% reservation is the way to go. But you know, that's not up to me, and I'd certainly will try to influence you. But I just think that that's the right thing to do. But you know, I just think the VCDC have worked so hard for so long that I think you want to keep them engaged a little bit longer, at least. Yeah.
One comment or a couple, then I got to go. First of all, I'd like to thank you for being able to speak today to everybody in the commission, to the VDC, and everybody. Number two, I agree wholeheartedly in a reservation system with no first come, first serve. Talk to Shane, it saves him a lot of problems. Number three, we do have that meeting. I don't know if it's 6 or 12 on Thursday, but we're going to have to elect some officers and we're going to have to sit down. And those officers are going to come up. They're going to have to make some hard decisions. We're going to get some people mad. Well, we got people mad now. What the hell? You know,
That happens.
I've had people mad at me forever. It doesn't bother me, but we're going to make some people mad, both campers, board members, workers. But excuse me, lay terms, but I think you've heard this word before. If you haven't, you're pretty sheltered, but the shit has really hit the fan now. Now's the time to go in and clean it up. And if the board members don't want to do it, they don't need to be on the board. We've got a mess as far as money, reservations, management. And we're going to sit down and write it out. Write it down and make the decisions we've been avoiding. It's not going to be a quick deal, Travis, because it's going to be, you might have the park board manager or the campground manager say, "To hell with you, I'm leaving." Okay, well,
So
that's
be
what
it.
goes.
So be it.
But we're going to have to make some tough decisions. You as commissioners might hear some complaints. I think we should run the new guidelines by the commission so they know what's going on. They don't hear about it secondhand in a convoluted form. Because you're going to hear about it. We're going to hear about it as park board, if I'm on the park board. But I do thank you for their time. And it is time to do it. It's not going to be cute. Well, county commission knows stuff isn't cute. So thank you very much. I got to go.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Excellent.
I really appreciate it. So Shane, one of the things we talked about when this first came up was in the event that we wind up short park management, what the state could help us with. You
Yes, we could
talked about-
definitely help out. You know, we have some outlying parks that we do run out of Lewis and Clark and make trips out to help with the management. So there are some things that we could do to help you guys out in the interim. We did have 2 interns, but one of them quit. But yeah, it's hard to keep people nowadays. But anyway, but we have enough staff that we could do that. So.
Okay, thanks. All right, so I think it's really on, if everybody agrees, it's really on the association at this point to see if, to see how much progress we can make on Thursday night. And one question I have though is how we're going to get people to that meeting, because even, I don't know when
Even
or
when
where
it
the
is.
meeting is. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was not at the meeting where it was set. I was out.
I don't think anybody knows where
Okay,
it is. So,
we'll fix that. There's Paul.
yeah, I don't think Paul was at the meeting either. Yeah.
Now's your chance to run, Paul.
Phone tree.
Yeah, so I don't know if we can find out from Terry when and where the meeting is, and I'd be glad to do what I did last month, which is call through the list, make sure people show
So
up.
it's in the paper. That's where I saw it.
Oh, it's in the paper.
Yeah, it's because you got to post it.
You have
Yes.
to post it and advertise it.
So it's in the
Yes.
paper, and I'm pretty sure it's at night.
I thought
Okay.
it was, that was my impression.
I couldn't remember if it was
at
6 or
7,
7, but
Yeah, but
6:30,
nobody's going to know unless we call, so
Yeah.
maybe we'll divide the
I
list
think
up.
the
and-
Roadhouse, correct?
Yes.
Usually that's the usual meeting place is the Roadhouse.
Out on Cherry Street,
Mhm.
Oh,
Chapman's.
Beside Dairy Queen.
Yep.
One of the most important establishments in town to my family, it seems like.
It's those burritos.
Now, are both of you going?
Yeah.
Wouldn't miss it.
So
I've got a conflict that night already. Not 2.
So I'll just leave it to you 2 then. That way we don't have to advertise and nobody,
Okay.
unless you need somebody else there.
At this point, we'd have notification issues, I think, with having three of us there.
24 hours.
Yeah.
That's all we need. And we've got that.
No, I'd love to have you there if you were interested in putting your oar in the water too.
Like I said,
And that'd be up to,
other than the county, I have no vested interest in,
well.
I'm
that's
not a
big-
camper. I don't use the rodeo grounds. Someday I might use the shooting club.
Yeah.
I'd have
We're
to
the
brush up,
lessors.
but
Which one of us?
Well, the county is the lessor, we're the.
yeah. So I mean, I am 100% for the county. That is what I'm
Yes.
looking out for.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to advertise that, Carrie, in case I can make it, then I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
I just have to make sure if it's 6 or 7.
Uh-huh.
Well, read
So I'm
the
not
paper.
early or late.
It's always
Read the
6.
paper, yeah.
It's always 6.
Yeah, it's not in the Monday Messenger. And I had a question on that, but we'll worry about that later.
Does anybody have anything else?
Oh, I move we adjourned.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
I
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
thank everyone for a lot of patience here. Thank you, Andy.
Is it
No,
okay
I'm
if
not.
I keep this or do you want it? Oh, it's yours? Is this an extra copy or is this yours?
This copy is mine.
Okay.
That is yours.
Okay. Because I could use